After Nick's presentation, we're going to have tea, coffee, and that cake that we saw here that was so beautiful is all being cut up and will be brought round along with coffees and teas to the tables, okay? Rather than everyone sort of jumping up, we thought we'd actually bring it to you today, just as a special treat, okay?
Thank you, Anne.
Right, over to Nick.
Thank you very much. Wow. I was wondering when you were going to do that clap. This is nice. My wife has just phoned me backstage and said, "How is it? What's it like?" I said, "Well, if I tell you I'm the only man in a room full of ladies, the majority of whom appear to have been drinking wine since 7:15. They've locked the door, they've drawn the curtains, and there's a great big carving knife on the table in front of me. I've been upstaged by a 90-year-old who looks 60, who was far more eloquent than I'm ever going to be, and her material was far better. And then I might get an invite for a coffee evening next to a sewerage work. So if I'm not home by 10, phone the police." Listen, thanks for coming out. It's great, and it's nice to see such a diverse range of ages, from barely alive to nearly gone. No, we're all getting there, aren't we? Let's be honest. So listen, if you're not aware of what tonight is going to be about, basically I do stand-up comedy, although some of you might be thinking, well, that's debatable. We'll decide on that later. And I'm just going to chat to you probably, for about 30 minutes, because I think that's as long as my bladder's going to last. And then we'll have a little break, and then I'll do a 15-minute set that I normally do at my gigs. Is that okay? I mean, if it's not okay, it doesn't matter, because that's what's going to happen. So, where shall I start? I'm an award-winning comedian. Woo-hoo. Leicester Comedy Festival 2023. I won the Silver Stand-Up, which I'll tell you about later. And I'm a drummer. I'm into my photography. I play walking rugby. I've got a dog. Married. I've got 3 kids, a grandchild. A 1974 VW camper van for sale if anyone's interested. Just thought I'd slip that in. And looking, I know, when we retire, I just don't know how I find time to work. And looking back, I've got absolutely no idea. And I do stand up. It's a real passion now. I run about 9 gigs in the county, and I gig sort of all over the place. And I've got to be honest, this was never a dream. It was never a passion. I went to King's in Gloucester as a child, and I got into the cathedral choir age 7, so I did 5 years as a chorister, pretty much 365 days a year. So I guess, sort of looking back, I was used to performing in public, but obviously in the choir you've got 6-10 other choristers around you, so you don't think anything about it. And looking at my school reports for when I was 5, they certainly didn't suggest that I was destined to do anything fantastic. And I have actually got them. These are genuine school reports. So this one, Michaelmas term 1963, I was 5. It took Nicholas a long while to adopt to life in kindergarten. He needs children of his own age to play with. I've got no idea what kids I was playing with at home, as he is socially immature. How can you be socially immature at 5? It gets worse. You wouldn't get away with this these days. There is little progress so far towards good table manners and plenty of practice in the holidays with the correct use of a knife and fork would benefit him greatly. That's pretty shocking, isn't it? 4 months on, you can read these afterwards if you like. There has been some improvement in Nicholas's attitude to school this term, but unfortunately, he remains very immature socially and his table manners still leave much to be They were focusing really heavily. I don't know what my parents were teaching me. I don't know. I can't even remember whether we had knives and forks at home, to be quite honest. It got better at age 5 years, 8 months. Nicholas is a very friendly and most likeable small boy. Why did they have to write as if I wasn't aware of how tall I was? He has tried very hard this term and has practically overcome all his former difficulties. I wasn't aware I had former difficulties, I've got to be honest. He has made more friends and has appeared happier as a result. But this is my favourite bit. His table manners have slightly improved. That's pretty shocking, isn't it? Have we got any teachers in this evening? Like, nobody's going to admit it, are they? Yeah. You wouldn't get away writing reports like that now, would you? But, so, I never thought I'd be doing stand-up. I know it might sound odd, but I don't like being in the limelight. So if we go out to parties or anything like that now, my wife always, you're just so miserable, you never talk to anybody. And I just quite like keeping myself to myself. But if somebody said, tomorrow you've got to go and do a gig at the O2 to 100,000 people, yeah, that's absolutely fine. But if I was in a room like this and you just sing me happy birthday, I find that really embarrassing and really awkward. And but you didn't even clap when I came on stage, so I guess the chance of you singing happy birthday is not going to happen, is it? And looking back, I think I was definitely influenced by humour. So I was born in 58, so I suppose 63, I was 5, and then probably influenced by stuff that went on in the 60s, and then sort of been 12 in 1970, and I think that's when I probably really started to take notice of stuff. I mean, before that as a kid, I used to love the old black and white films, you know, Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, that sort of stuff, and then Morecambe and Wise, the two Ronnies, Tommy Cooper. And then when we got into the 70s, and we had programmes like Till Death Us Do Part, Love Thy Neighbour, On the Buses, all those sort of things, I think subconsciously probably played a part in an interesting comedy. And now when you look back, and I think we can all agree, they were the most sexist, racist, homophobic programmes ever probably produced. But back then it was just accepted. And we have obviously moved on since then. And obviously the BBC then went on to make fantastic programmes like Fawlty Towers, and I think, Pam, you mentioned The Good Life in Surbiton, which was absolutely brilliant. And then going into the 80s, we had the very anarchic, The Young Ones, and then sort of into the 90s, programme like The Office with Ricky Gervais and Extras, and then more recently, I don't know if anyone's watched Detectorists or Small Profits with Mackenzie Crook. But they're just absolutely brilliant. And I think bit by bit, all that played a part. But I'd never thought of getting into stand-up until Dad suggested to me in 1994, when he was chairman of Forest of Dean Lions, we're having a variety night. We need somebody to come and tell jokes. Absolutely not. No chance. I am not doing that. And he just badgered me. And in the end, I agreed. I said, well, what do you want? He said, well, could you just come and just tell jokes 10 minutes in the first bit and 10 minutes in the second bit? So stupidly, I agreed. Never done anything like it before. And it was the Royal Forest of Dean College in Colford. And just to give you an idea of what the evening was like, this is, oh no, not that one, this is the programme. So this was April the 16th, 1994. So in the first half, I was sandwiched between Julia Gibbons on the flute and the Wye Valley Chorus. Also in that half were the pupils of the Elizabeth Corney School of Dancing doing Cats and the second Cinderford Guides and Rustbridge Brownies doing songs round the campfire. And this was my introduction to show business. I went on, and they had stage lights like this, really bright. And there was a full theatre. There was probably about 100 people there. And I went on, couldn't see a thing. These lights were so blinding. And I was just doing standard jokes that I knew. I wasn't doing proper stand-up as it was, just standard jokes. And there was some laughter. There was a few titters. And then I heard, and I said, somebody's enjoying themselves, clearly. And there was a sharp intake of breath from the audience. And I didn't know what was happening. I couldn't see anything because the lights were so bright. But as I finished, I came off and the house lights went up. And there was about 4 people with learning difficulties in the front row who clearly had no control over what they were saying. And I had to go back out in the second half and do it again. And it was just horrendous. And after that, Dad said, oh, that went really well, didn't it? It was like, no, it absolutely not. That was shocking. Do not ever ask me to do anything like this again. And I didn't. I left it alone for quite some time. And then, I don't know what made me do it, but there was a competition. When was this? I think this was, I don't know when this was. I don't know, maybe a few years later. But it was at the King's Theatre. And it was a bit of a charity variety night competition. And I decided to enter, and again, just to give you an idea of what I was up against, this was heat 3, so I don't know how many heats they had. But one of the contestants was Dee Dee, a thespian who began singing just 2 years ago. She's been learning sign language and will be incorporating this in her act tonight. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen somebody sing and do sign language at the same time. It was far more hysterical than anything I was ever going to do. There was Truly, she was on. Truly, although training as a teacher in English and art, she still finds time to sing into a hairbrush in front of a... It's just, what have I let myself in for? There was a guy on there, and you can look this guy up on YouTube. Have a look at him when you go home. A guy called Nicky Flash. So Nicky's write-up has been performing for over 15 years all over Devon, Cornwall and Birmingham, a compere club DJ and a comedian who is crazy and outrageous. He wasn't. He was shockingly awful. I Googled him to see, well, in fact, I Googled all of them to see if any of them were still going. And Nicky Flash was actually on Britain's Got Talent in 2008 doing Escapology act. And I don't know, you may remember it. He got stuck inside this sack. It was one of the funniest things I'd seen. And the eventual winners were a band called Gate Crash, who just happened to be the sons of the organiser. So it was, yeah, it wasn't rigged at all. And then I left. I didn't do anything. And then in about 2002, there was an advert in the local paper, The Citizen, that we used to get. Tiny little advert. It just said, comedians wanted, phone this number. So I phoned the number, and this brummy voice answered. I said, I'm phoning up about the advert. And he said, oh, right, are you a comedian? I went, no, I've never done it really. He went, right, well, I'm putting this gig on in the Forest of Dean. And as soon as he said the Forest of Dean, that brought memories back. And it was like, no. He said, all you got to do is write 5 minutes of material and come down and perform it. Okay. So about 3 weeks later, I find myself in Sling, that hotbed of comedy, in the Miners' Arms, with a variety of people in there. There was one lady in there, I thought she was going to be brilliant. She had this massive folder full of notes, and I thought, oh my God, she's just going to blow me away. And she just went on and basically read from this, and she was awful. It was just so dreary listening to it. I mean, it was worse than Pam. It was just... I can't believe you're 90, by the way. Did you say you were a dietitian? I think me and you need to have a chat afterwards, don't we, really? But I did this 5 minutes and it was all right. And Pat said, do you want to do another gig? I said, yeah, okay. So a couple of weeks later, I did a gig in Westbury Village Hall, and that went well. I thought, I've got this cracked. This is easy, this comedy business. And he said, do you want to do another one? I went, yeah, definitely. So I ended up doing a gig at, I think it was the Forest Hills Golf Club. And that's where the wheels came off the bus, really. Because I was up on stage. This is only my third gig. And I was doing the stuff, blah, blah, blah. And there was a couple of guys sort of sat here chatting. So I said, guys, excuse me, do you mind just shutting up, please? Yes, mate. As soon as you say something funny, we will. And it was like, oh. That's quite hard to deal with when you've only done 3 gigs. And then I was sort of brought back down to earth with fairly massive bump, I would say. And it would have been easy to give up, but do you know what? I got the bug for it by then. And I started doing sort of proper gigs. And so I don't know what your sort of impression of the comedy circuit is, but all these guys at the top of the chain, you know, the Ricky Gervaises, the Mickey Flanagans, the Michael McIntyres, Rod Gilbert, Sarah Millican, they've all started in exactly the same way. There is no quick route in comedy, or there never used to be. It's slightly different now. But they've all gone exactly the same way. So what you have to do is there's a massive circuit called the open mic circuit. And basically that is full of literally every night thousands and thousands of want-to-be comedians travelling all over the country. And I used to go to Manchester, Liverpool, Torquay, just to go and do 5 minutes. 5 minutes of material, and you don't get paid. So you start off on the open mic level, you go and do 5 minutes. If you're good enough, you'll get asked to go and do another 5 minutes, and then you just keep working at it till somebody says, oh, actually, can you come and do 10 minutes? And then you'll go and do a 10-minute spot. And then if you're lucky, it'll be, well, actually, can you come and do 15 minutes? And I did that for, I don't know, probably 18 months. I was doing the open mic circuit, and I was still working at the time. So it was finishing work at 6, shooting down to Torquay to be on stage at 8:30, doing 5 minutes, driving all the way back home and getting up at 7 o'clock in the next morning to go to work. But it was great. I really loved it. And then I thought, do you know what? I could actually start running my own gigs. And I did. I started in, I think it was about 2004. I started doing a gig at Gloucester Guildhall and started running that. And back in the day, I mentioned Sarah Millican, but she came and did a 10-minute spot for me at the Guildhall when she was just before she made it big. John Richardson, I don't know if any of you know John Richardson, but he's really massive now. John did his second gig for me at the Guildhall, and even back then you could see he was something special. He was going to make it, and I ran that gig for about I think 5 years. And then I started a gig at Gloucester Rugby Club, and we ran that from, I think, around about 2012 to 2022, and we were getting about 250 people in there for a gig. And then I was running a gig at Gloucester Brewery from 2016 till 2025, and now I run, I've got about 9 gigs all over the place. So it's sort of really evolved, and it's great. And I host all my own gigs. So I just basically do all the chat at the start, and then introduce all of the acts, and then I try and go and do my own sort of 20-minute sets. But it is such a competitive industry at the minute. It is really, really hard to get decent paid gigs, because there's so many people doing it, and the biggest problem is, especially in the open mic circuit, they see the likes of Michael McIntyre, they see the Mickey Flanagans, the Alan Carrs of this world, and they all think we're going to get there and we're going to be earning an absolute fortune. And the reality is you won't. You know, you've got to be out 5-6 nights a week, really working hard all the time, just to get the flow, and then you've got to be good as well, and you've got to be writing all the time. It's such a hard thing to do. Nowadays, there's a lot of, especially a lot of the younger acts. Oh, is that rain? Yeah, rain. A lot of them now aren't actually going out and doing so many open mics. They're just videoing themselves and stick everything on TikTok or Instagram, and it's not the same. You know, you don't get that audience interaction. You don't see people just on TikTok. So it's not something I particularly like to do, because I struggle to turn on my phone, let alone use Instagram or TikTok, to be honest. So on the subject of material, I just try and talk about stuff I know. So I write all my stuff out longhand. I've got a notebook, so if an idea pops into my head, I'll just make a note of it, and then I'll elaborate on that. You probably won't be able to read this, but I've broken all my material down. I've actually got 44 separate headings of material, and I counted these up, and then within those there's all sorts of stuff. Within that there's nearly 50,000 words. So the average novel is 70,000 to 100,000 words apparently. So I've nearly written a book, which is great. And then I've broken it down then between the stuff in blue is all material that I've done, and then everything in orange is stuff I haven't done. And the thing is, when you sat at home writing stuff, especially when you're writing new material, you're writing, you think, oh, this is brilliant, this is fantastic, people will love this, this will be great, and you feel really pleased. And I went and did a new material night a couple of weeks ago in Ledbury, and I did like 10 minutes. It was all on holidays, specific stuff about holidays. Absolutely died on my arse. It was nothing. I was like so gutted. And then I went back and looked at it, and I tend to video every gig I do. And when I looked at it, I could see, well, it was new, and actually the flow wasn't right, and there was probably too many words, and actually that bit didn't fit with this bit. So I've just gone back and chopped it all up, and then I'll go and try it again. If it doesn't work again, I'll try it one more time. If you've done stuff and on the third time it doesn't work, that's it. You just got to kick it into touch. So you can spend all this time writing, and actually the stuff that you use comes, all of a sudden it gets condensed down into a very, very tiny bit. So when you see these acts, especially the ones that do the big stadium tours, like Mickey Flanagan, he'll do an hour and a half of material, and an hour and a half of material, of good material, is just such a massive amount of stuff to write, to be able to get that all down to be able to entertain for an hour and a half. And I just dread to think how long that would be. And I've got a bit of a rule that, so if I write all my, when I go and do a gig, I write, just show you this, it says, actually that's not the best one to look at. So I write, when I'm going to go and do a gig, I'll write all my stuff out longhand, and then after the gig I'll just highlight it and all the stuff I actually did, and then I put that into a spreadsheet. So of every venue I do, I've got a set list for every venue, the date I did it. So if I get booked to do that venue again, I've got a personal policy that I won't repeat material, just in case somebody was the last gig and they've heard it all before, which is fine in theory, but it puts an awful lot of pressure on you to come up with new stuff and then take the chance that when you deliver it, it's going to work. But it is a personal thing, and I find it works really well. So when I go and do gigs, or when anyone goes and does a gig really, especially if I've not been to that place, I like to have a look on social media, see if they've got a Facebook page, because what people put on Facebook, on community pages, quite often is absolutely fantastic, and you don't need to write anything, you can just read out what's on that page. Unfortunately, I wasn't allowed to join the Uley page. I was blocked because I didn't answer the... No, I wasn't. But you can find a lot about that, and I find Wikipedia is quite a good tool to do research, and then I'll type in strange facts about whatever this is, and all sorts of weird and wonderful things can come up. So I like to look at that, so I know pretty much what I'm going into, and it's a bit of a reference point. I like to get to gigs early as and will testify, and just sort of sit on the sideline and watch people come in, because when people come to comedy nights, there is definitely a certain pattern of behaviour. So you'll get the people who will automatically come in and sit at the back and assume they're safe. Wrong. Absolutely wrong. Your best bet if you go to a comedy night is to probably sit in the second or third row. Don't sit in the front row. Don't sit at the back, because guaranteed you'll be picked on. And I like to listen to what people say. I'll just sit there quietly having a beer, listening to what people are saying. And quite often I can use that as well, especially if they haven't noticed me. So I'll come and say, oh, hi, yeah, Ruth to be here, blah, 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 dee. Before I start, I need to make you aware that as well as doing this, I'm also a sidekick. And if I get a message, I need to address it. And I'll have heard somebody say something. So I'm getting a feeling there's a message coming through from over here. And I'm getting the word so-and-so. And you can see the look of horror on people's faces. And I'm finding you've been, and they may have been somewhere, or they've done something, or they've been on holiday. So I'm getting the feeling, and we've not met, no, we've not met ever. Just telling that, so yeah, as you can see, I'm psychic, or I could have just overheard you talking in the bar, and that's always quite a nice one. But I didn't listen to anything any of you have said this evening, just watched you all locking the wine back, to be honest. Which was far more entertaining. The other thing I do, and not that you'll go to many comedy nights, but you'll quite often, especially if you go to sort of more local gigs, you'll see comedians wearing this type of watch. So this is a vibrating watch that I can set the time to, because one of the big things in comedy, especially with newer acts, is if you're given 5 minutes, you should only do 5 minutes. Don't do 10 minutes, don't do 15 minutes, because it just knocks onto the evening. So I can set this for whatever length of set I'm doing, and then it'll buzz to tell me you're getting near the end of your time. And then, as I say, I'd like to video all my gigs, and I do watch it back, and I'm really sort of pretty critical. And it might be anything about how I stand, what I'm wearing, how I address the audience, how quickly I speak, how slowly I speak, how many ums and ahs, how many words I've used. Are there words in there that I don't need to use? Have I sworn? I don't swear an awful lot, but sometimes I do. Sometimes it's just out of nerve, sometimes it's just because I can, to be honest. And then basically, you just go and do the whole thing again and again and again, and just try and improve and get better and better. I enjoy what I'm doing now. I don't think I could ever have done it as a full-time career. I've got a friend at the minute who's brilliant. He's absolutely flying. Have a look at him, Scott Bennett. He's been on the circuit for about 12 years. He's just making it now. He's just got on Have I Got News For You? He was on Live at the Apollo last year. But he gave up his full-time job, about 12 years ago, and he's been doing comedy full-time. But he's out nearly every night of the week. He's married, he's got kids, but he's sacrificed all of that to pursue his dreams. And Scott is 45, 46. And I was chatting to him last week because he did a gig in Stroud. I said, how's it going? He said, I've got onto this wheel and honestly, I don't know how to get off now. He said, so I've either got to keep going. He said, because I can't go back and do a normal job. I couldn't go back to a 9-to-5 job. So I'm just sticking with it. I mean, he's earning a fortune, to be fair to him. He's doing really well. But that's a hard life, isn't it? Being out 5-6 nights a week, you're away from home, you're sleeping in hotels. It's not as glamorous as it seems. Another friend, I love name dropping. There's a Spanish comedian, Ignacio Lopez, who was also on Live at the Apollo last year, and he's just got on Have I Got News for You? And he did a big Rotary gig for us earlier last year. And I said, how's the tour going? He said, well, I've took my wife, she's come along. I said, why is that? He said, well, she thought it was the life of Riley, and I was out enjoying myself every night. I said, how's she find it? He said, she absolutely hates it. He said, because we're in different travel lodges every night, do the show, finish at 10:30, all I want to do is go home, go to bed. We get up, have a drive to the next gig, which could be 200 miles away the next day, get there late in the afternoon, just time for tea, down to he said, it's no life. But he said the same thing. He's got onto this wheel, just doesn't know how to get off it. And I guess the next step for them is where the likes of Michael McIntyre and Alan Carr is, where they've done their stand-up career, and now they're moving on to game shows and TV presenting. So they're off that sort of constant wheel of touring or gigging all the time. But it's a hard life, but I enjoy it. You know, I've met some fantastic people. There's idiots. There is definitely idiots on the circuit, without a shadow of a doubt. But by and large, it's been great. And then I get to come and talk to lovely people like you, which is actually, now I'm thinking about it, is. So yeah, that's basically all I was going to say on that. I don't know, has anybody got any questions they would want to ask? No questions. Normally you get, what's your thoughts on females in comedy, which I'm surprised none of you have asked. Does anybody want to ask that question? I'm going to tell you what my thoughts on females in comedy is anyway. It's a real bone of contention in the industry at the minute. There's simply not enough females on the circuit, not enough good females anyway. And there's all sorts of reasons, and I've never seen it, I've never experienced it, to be fair, but I don't doubt the people who have. And it tends to be more at the lower level gigs of just being treated as second-class citizens, being asked for sexual favours in exchange for gigs, just being badly treated, and it's shocking. It is, and unfortunately, in comedy, there's nobody controlling it. Anybody can set up a gig anywhere they like, and there's nobody monitoring that. There's nobody managing it. You don't have to set, there's no standards within the industry, and I'm guessing, for a single female, it can be pretty daunting, and that is definitely reflected in the number of female acts that are out there on the circuit, and it's shocking. It shouldn't happen, but as an industry, there's very little that's been done to encourage females to come in, and it's a shame. That said, in my experience also, there's a handful of really good female comics at sort of my sort of level at the minute, and then at the lower level, you've got a lot of the newer acts coming in, and they talk about a lot of female-related problems, bodily parts, issues, and audiences don't want to hear it. And it would be the same about a man doing exactly the same thing. And some women comedians just try to use it as a bit of a shock tactic. And when you're sat as an MC and you've got somebody coming on and they're doing 15 minutes of that, and you're watching an audience just sort of recoil in horror, it is quite difficult to watch. So I think it is improving gradually. There's definitely movements and there's definitely groups, especially in Bristol, Cardiff, where they're trying to make it better for female acts in the industry. But I when I started, I didn't even think there'd be any issues. But it's a real problem. And the same goes also for transgender people. You know, they get bullied, they get abused, and it's not audiences, it's fellow comedians, which is just, it's bloody shocking, really. And I try and, I try and make all my gigs, I don't care who anybody is, what they are, don't care what sex they are, what gender they are, as long as they're funny and entertaining, they'll get booked, and if they're not, they won't. It's as simple as that. So that's probably all I've got to say, really, on the comedy circuit. What I was going to suggest was, should we have a quick 5-minute bladder break, coffee, wine break, and then I'll just come and do my standard 10-15 minute set, and then we'll be done and we can all go home. Is that okay? Yeah. Well, thank you very much for listening. So yes, Anne. Should we have a 5-minute break then? Yeah.
Okay, so we'll do that. We won't have coffee just yet, but if anyone wants to get another drink, I'm sure we can organise that at the bar.